Welcome, YouTube users. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Riccardo. If you want to hear this entire show with intros, outros, and music, please go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. All right, please welcome to the show, Christine Elise McCarthy.
Hello.
It's kind of funny because I feel like I know you so much better than I actually do because I know I've known your mom, Gail and Alvin for so long, since like the 90s, that I
Yeah.
feel like I hear all about you all the time because
Wow.
Alvin's a very close friend of mine.
Yeah.
So,
Alvin's a king. He's a king among men.
so, um, so I wanted to talk to you about your early days. I mean, you grew up right in Boston, right?
I'm from Roslindale. So Roslindale is part of the city of Boston proper. I went to Boston public schools. So yeah.
What was that like? Did you enjoy going to school in Boston?
Um, well, I mean, that's the only school I ever went to, so I don't have anything to compare it to. I was a bookish kid. I was a big reader and I was good at school, so that there was that. Um, And I got bused. I went through the whole busing thing. I started getting bused in fourth grade. But fortunately, I got into Boston Latin, which is seventh to 12th. So I didn't, from fourth, fifth, sixth grade, different school every year because I was in the advanced classes. And there was only one class per grade in the 70s. One third grade class, one fourth grade class, and it would change schools every year. So I went to a different school every year for a while. But then Boston Latin is 7 to 12. So I was planted there for 6 years. And yeah, I mean, I didn't hate school.
Were you like involved in a lot of activities? Like, did you know at a young age that you wanted to be an actress?
I never wanted to be an actor. I never wanted to do anything that involved performing or being judged by other people. I was always super, super shy, despite the way I presented, being super punk rock and sort of seeming to invite a lot of attention and derision. Uh, but no, I didn't do anything like that. I went in school. I was really shy. The minute I could have a job after school, I did. So I worked 20 hours a week. From the day I turned 16 until I graduated. So that was my extracurricular shit, was just work and then going to shows and hanging out with people on Newbury Comics.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show is because of your association with the Boston hardcore scene. And I just had Jamie and Chris from SSD on, and Jamie actually said, when I said that you were coming on the show, oh, she knows it all. She knows everything that happened.
Yeah,
So,
I watched that. I watched it last night actually.
oh, you
And
did?
I did. And Chris Foley must have done 95% of the talking, which is interesting because I always think of Chris as being sort of a background, quiet, shy guy too. And but he was chatty. He was chatty. It was a fun interview.
He was fantastic, I thought. Um, how did you get involved with that scene and those guys?
I was already going to clubs with my parents, going to see, bands from back in the day like the Neighborhoods and Mission of Burma and Lou Miami and the Cosmetics and all the old school pre-punk rock, new wavy Boston punk bands. And the only other underage people that I ever saw at those shows were Springer and Michael Patrick McDonald. Michael I knew from school because he went to Latin as well. This is just the three of us kids though ever on the scene. There was not like any kind of a youth culture. I was always the youngest person in the room by a lot. I think the drinking age then had just turned to be 21 too. So I was very young to be 15, 16 to be in at Bunratty's and at the Rat and the Channel and stuff. And so I was at Alvin and I, my stepdad and I went to see the Dead Kennedys at the Channel. And the week before, I'd been walking down the street by the Prudential, and a kid across the street was walking the opposite direction and was staring. And I said, "What the fuck are you looking at from across the street?" And that's all that happened. And so here we are standing against the wall, Al and I at the Channel. And a guy walks up and goes, "Hey, did you yell, 'What the fuck are you looking at me from across the street by the Prudential last week?'" And I said, "That was you?" He goes, "Yeah." And that was Jamie Sharappa.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and
funny.
Jamie said, "Yeah, I wasn't staring at you because, I was staring because you look like my ex-girlfriend." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's the worst pickup line I've ever heard. That's so fucking cheesy. Get lost." He's like, "No, really?" And so within 2 weeks I was calling Jamie Sharp my best friend. So I got into that, and that was pre-SSD. So Jamie and I were like going to the Spit and to Metro and stuff, and all the clubs there were back then. Because Jamie was old enough. He wasn't old enough. He was 19. He must have had a good fake ID too. Anyway, I was hanging out with Jamie. So before the whole hardcore scene even existed. So I was sort of in with the in crowd. When it did develop, I was Jamie's sidekick. So, and everyone loves Jamie. Jamie's an awesome person. I still consider him my oldest best friend.
And, if anyone out there is wondering why I'm asking Christine about this, she was in the film American Hardcore, which I thought you were great in. And, you're always really honest no matter what you do. That's what I really like about you, because we're going to talk about your book and stuff later. But you were very honest about that. I remember you said they weren't a fun band, and it's true, because I remember that too. People look back at SSD now, and I think they must have a memory loss or something about how they remember the band. Well, you must have went to a lot of their shows.
Yeah, most of them. Because I was dating Springer. Springer was my boyfriend for 2 years in high school. So my boyfriend and my best friend are in the band. And then this whole group of young men, mostly men, were hanging around that were my age. So and didn't drink, and I didn't drink either. And so it was a sort of a love fest for me right away with all those guys.
So you were part of the straight edge scene.
Yeah, except that I did acid occasionally with Springer.
No, your mom is a very well-known photographer, and she shot some iconic photos of the Boston Crew. Were you around when she was doing those shots?
Obviously, I facilitated that. She did. I was the entree for her. She wouldn't have had a chance to shoot them.
I knew you had to be around, but I was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What do you remember about those photo shoots? Because they look really cool.
Well, there's a whole bunch. There's some that were shot in Roslindale Square. The ones with the van in them were in Roslindale Square. And then there was a whole bunch down in the combat zone when the combat zone was still a thing. There's just goofy guys. I mean, I think I said in American Hardcore, they're just a bunch of like nice, well-raised, raised right boys from suburbia that were sort of afraid of girls and looked much tougher than they actually were. They're just a bunch of goobers, except for maybe Al Burrell, who was not a goober.
There's a big buzz on them going on here 40 years later. Does that surprise you? Because it surprises doesn't surprise you at all?
No, because people are super nostalgic for that. I mean, people that were around are nostalgic for it, and people that missed it are nostalgic for it. Like, I'm nostalgic. I wish I hadn't missed Janis Joplin and James Brown, actually I could have seen James Brown and somehow missed him. But when you miss something as important as like the whole Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and that sort of scene, you have a nostalgia for it that's just sort of created in your head for missing something so important. And then there's people that were there that they have that nostalgia. I'm a sentimental person, so no, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that they're getting all this attention. Did you go to college after you finished high school?
I went to BU for a year. I went to film school at BU. I thought I wanted to be a director is what I thought I wanted to do. Blade Runner had come out, and I was always a film noir fan. I was a big collector of Pulp Fiction, paperback Pulp Fiction from the 30s to the 60s. And sorry about that. I don't have to turn those jingle things off on my laptop. And I was a big fan of old Hollywood. And when I saw Blade Runner, and like the Maltese Falcon and the Big Sleep and the Killing and those big awesome film noir films, I thought that Blade Runner was a reinvention of film noir, and I thought that inspired me to think I would like to go on and carry that baton and reinvent and bring film noir back to the fore. But I went to school there for a year for reasons that are too boring to get into. I hated them. Actually, the reason is I had to take a science class. I took computer programming, and so this is like when you're writing code in Pascal. Multiple languages existed back then. I don't know which one I was studying. I think it was Pascal. But nobody had computers. There was a computer lab at school you had to use, and it was the hardest class I've ever taken in my life. I'd never been really particularly challenged by anything at school. It always came very easy to me. And so this thing right when I'm about to tear my hair out and think I can't fucking do this, I would solve it and be able to and write the program. And I was so thrilled by that. I wanted to take whatever that class was called, computer programming 201 after 101 as my second science prerequisite, and they wouldn't let me. They said, no, you got to take a different 101. You got to take astronomy or another science class, another 101. And I go, what doesn't make any sense? Why shouldn't I just progress deeper into this course of science? And they wouldn't let me. They made me take it as an elective. And I was a films major. So I took a fucking computer class instead of a film elective. And then I got a terrible professor and I tanked that class. It was awful. So I just had a really bad taste in my mouth for BU. I didn't like that they were so rigid. And then I thought, hey, it doesn't make sense to finish film school in a town that has no film industry. So I thought I'd move to LA. At BU was like 12,000 a semester or something back then. I think it's like 100 now. But before Reagan undid it, California schools, UCLA and USC, were state schools for like $600 a semester. So I thought I'd move to California, take a year off, establish residency, and go to film school in a town that had a film community and go for school for much less money. That didn't happen. I had to get a job for $6 an hour and didn't have a car and didn't know anybody. And that's not how my path ended up going, but that was my plan.
Did you get to do any film, like work on any independent films or do anything in Boston at all?
It was nothing like that. It was nothing like that. Boston was a music scene. I was neck deep. If I wanted to do music, I knew everything and everyone about that, but I didn't want to do music and I'm not a musician. So no, there was nothing. There was nothing. I've never known an actor. I didn't talk to the kids that were in drama club at school. I just zero entrance to anything film in Boston.
When did you decide, like, did you go and visit LA and decided you wanted to move there, or did you just say, I'm going to LA? And what year around did that happen?
It was 84. In the summer of 82, I came to LA with Springer for a vacation. The next summer of 83 was the tour that SSD did with GBH. And I did the whole California leg of that, up and down California. And I always loved it here and knew I wanted to be here eventually. I just didn't think I would do it at 19 in 1884 by myself with $3,000 and didn't know anybody and didn't have anywhere to live and didn't have a driver's license. And, I came here and it was scary. And I cried every day for a year.
Oh, let me go back for a second here. So I have to ask another music questions because that's an interesting thing you brought up. So was that the first time SSD went to California?
I think it might have been. Yeah.
I think so.
Feel like it would have come and Springer would have been here and I wouldn't have been with them. So yeah, I think that was, yeah.
What was that like?
It was awesome. It was awesome. Where, girls weren't allowed in the van. Nancy Burrell will deny that that's the case, but Al Burrell always had a bone to pick with me. He hated Springer from the beginning, and the fact that I was with Springer, I know the fact that I was with Springer made Al hate me by association. So Al had no respect for me, so there's no girls in the van, even though I think both Nancy and Angie, maybe even Bridget, will denied that's the case, but at least I wasn't fucking allowed in the fucking van. So anyway, I don't even remember how we got ourselves around because we were going from, Los Angeles all the way up to like San Francisco. So with Jake Phelps and Andy Strahan and Andy was another best friend of mine. So it was great. It was like an incredible adventure, an incredible punk rock adventure with a bunch of guys I knew and trusted completely. And I saw a bunch of iconic bands of the era and lived on pop.
Andy from DYS you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. You were around like the whole crew back then. You said
Andy Strahan and Tony Perez, Choke and I was friends with Choke, but Andy and Tony were like still a family to me. But I was friendly with Choke. Yeah, I mean, I was there. I knew they were all, it was a brotherhood. Dave Smalley, everybody. And because of Jamie Sharappa, I was just completely embraced by all of them, with the exception of Al Burrell and maybe Jake Phelps, who was just the scariest person I've ever known.
I know Liz, Tony's sister, because Tom Wilson's a very good friend of mine. And I know Tony was one of the original Boston crew guys. When was it in 1984 that you moved to LA?
Where?
When in 1984?
December 29th.
I moved there January 4th, 1984. I bought a one-way ticket from here as well.
Wow.
I went out there to work in the music industry, and that's what I ended up doing, working for record labels. Wow, it's fun. We didn't know each other, obviously, back then, but that's interesting. Did you go to see SSD when they played at the Olympic Auditorium with Suicidal in 1984?
Yeah. They were in the metal, they were in their metal phase then, which I was completely not about. I didn't, a lot of those kids came to punk rock through metal, you know. I did not. So I didn't come to hardcore through metal. I came to hardcore through the broader punk rock scene, you know. So metal seemed like a big backwards move to me. Springer with long hair, bleh,
Yeah,
you
that
know.
show was really hard to watch, unfortunately. I'll never forget seeing him come out on stage with that hat on and stuff. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh my God.
yeah.
I imagine you must have seen a few November group shows.
Very, very, very many. Very many. Yeah. And they were opening for everybody that mattered back then, like Men Without Hats and Billy Idol and Gary Newman and Julian Cope and like anybody that came to town that Teardrop Explodes, that kind of stuff, they would open for them. So I got to get a lot of I went to a lot of shows, yes.
It probably Spit, Metro, Channel, all those places they played.
And they'd play like those beach shows too, like not Nantasket, but what's the other beach place that has like they would have shows up there? Maybe it was Nantasket, but beachy communities they would do.
Wellfleet, maybe?
No, no, no,
Wellfleet?
no carnival like with a carnival on the beach kind of place, like Nantasket. Maybe it's Nantasket, but that sort of thing. Yeah, many, many, and I was a huge November fan. I loved them. I was a big Down Avenue fan as well.
I saw November Group a few times. They were great. I didn't
Oh,
know Alvin back then, but I did go see the shows. So you moved out there in September in 84. When you got there, where did you live and what was your plan? Did you have a plan? You said
I
you were alone a lot and cried a lot.
I did. Andy Strahan came with me for the first 2 weeks. So Andy and I came out, and I had rented a hotel by the week on just north of Hollywood Boulevard on Whitley, right where the Fredericks of Hollywood used to be on Hollywood Boulevard, like the side street up there. It was like a Motel 8 or something. And I stayed there for like a week. Alvin has a brother that lives out here, and he lived out here at the time. Um, and I assumed that Alvin's brother and I, he's like my uncle, that I would have at least him to hang out with when I got here. He helped me. So this is another weird story. The short story is he got some friend of his to let me stay at his house for another week, and then I found an apartment. So I was within 2 weeks I had my apartment. But Al's brother was like, "Yeah, I can't like be some surrogate father for you. So like, never call us." And so the only person I knew here told me not to lose their phone number.
He doesn't
So
sound like his brother at all.
and it's a really weird thing. I love his name is Kevin. I love Kevin. I don't know he doesn't remember it like that. That is what happened though. So yeah, and so I took the bus everywhere for 2.5 years too. I got a job in Beverly Hills as a cashier, and I took the bus from my first apartment was at Sunset and Normandy, where
Wow.
The original Zanku was there, right? Like half a block south of that Zanku, and I was there for 4 years, I think. It's just got torn down this year. That building got torn. A little bungalow got torn down this year, but that's where I landed. And I took the bus all the way to Beverly Hills every day to work for $6 an hour.
When I got there, I lived in Hermosa Beach, so I was in the South Bay, but I just was there last year. I try to go there as often as I can, but I didn't go for a period of time. I can't believe how different LA is compared to the 80s.
Look at
Wow.
Boston. Boston's worse.
Yeah, true. Are
So
you surprised how much LA has changed?
no, it's inevitable. All cities changed. I mean, and it's not all for the worse, you know. Uh, Boston's changes really bum me out, but because they feel really abrupt to me. I don't go to Boston often, so the changes feel like, oh my god, like I don't recognize Kenmore Square and I don't recognize Boylston Street. And here it's more gradual. It's like watching somebody get older, get fat. It happens slowly, so you don't really notice it until you see a picture from the past.
So you said you had that, shitty job, or I don't know if it was a shitty job, but you didn't make a lot of money. Were you, what was your plan at that point? Were you thinking about acting?
No, I don't know how no, I never wanted to be an actor. Never, 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 never,
Wow,
never.
really?
No. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be involved with filmmaking. And I didn't think I could ever perform because I was shy, and it's just not a thing that I didn't know anyone that ever did it, even in school. Just not my thing. And so I thought I'd go to film school after work. So I went to LACC, LA City College, for a semester or two, taking a class or two after work. And it was like, okay, in 16 years, I'll have a fucking degree from LACC. Who cares? Nobody will care. And it's too slow. What else can I do? And then I thought, oh, if I'm going to be a director and I'm going to direct actors, I should take an acting class, so I understand what actors are doing, and then I can speak to them in a language with some informed language. And enjoyed it more than I ever thought I could, even though it terrified me. I was terrified the whole time, and then I would leave the class elated and excited for the next week. And then by the time the next week came around, I was shitting my pants, afraid again. But I thought, hey, this is what better way, with no skill, no training, and no talent, what better way to get in the film industry than be an actor? So I decided to try it that way. And because I was 21 or 22 or whatever and looked 15, really genuinely looked 15, which makes me, when I was 15, getting into nightclubs where you had to be 21, if I still looked 15 when I was 21, imagine how young I looked when I was 15. But I played high school. I started working right away, and I played high school for like a decade.
Do you remember how, like you said, do you remember what that first job was? I mean, I think I heard somewhere China Beach was one of your first
It was an
gigs.
early job. It was an early job, not my first. My first was a movie of the week, called The Town Bully, about a true story about some guy that was in some small town. It's a pretty interesting documentary about it, who was just this fucking asshole that was like seducing high school girls and stealing people's sheep, and just being an all-around bad guy. And the town got together and killed him, and they never found his body or anything. That's what really happened in the movie of the week. Of course, Bruce Boxleitner was the cop, and you can't have people get away with a crime in 1980s TV, so that had to be resolved, and people had to be caught for the crime. But in reality, that didn't happen. And yeah, so that was my first job ever. And then a writer's strike happened in the middle of that. So then there was no work to be had for a couple of months. And I did like head of the class, and the same casting director for head of the class and China Beach is the same guy named John Levy. So John was a big fan of mine. So, and John also cast ER, which I did. So John Levy gave me most of the more important things on my resume.
Were those all before 90210?
Yeah.
So, because you were on ER for a while, right?
Well, ER was after 90210. So I was on ER for a whole season 2. That was 1995, 96 season. 90210 was, I got that in the end of 91. So that was 91, 92. Chucky, I did in 89.
How did you get the role of Emily Valentine on 90210? Because that was a pretty important role for you.
Yeah, I got it because I had
Is that
already
on
known.
your end?
Yeah, it's me. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I was like, what was that?
It's Blair William Borden, another Boston crew guy. The only one that still lives in LA with me, texting me. How did I get it? Oh, the standard way, audition, like that. My agent goes, you have an audition, and back then there was no fax machines or anything. So you had to go to the location, pick up the material for the audition, go home. And then maybe it was later that day or another day in the week, and then go in and drive in again and do it. The casting, the breakdown of this character was described as Julia Roberts, gorgeous, drop dead, beautiful, cascading red hair, curly hair, and like another popular girl. And I looked like this, basically, with like 2 inches of black roots. And I went in as me, which I did for most of the jobs that mattered on my career. ER, same thing happened on ER with the casting description for the character on ER was Helen Hunt from Mad About You. So
Helen
sort of
Hunt.
super straight and very preppy, and like that. I can't do Julia Roberts, and I can't do preppy. I actually didn't know the preppy description. I got the appointment last minute. And so anyway, I go in with myself. I went in with my hair with the roots and jack boots on and red lipstick. And I'm just like my, post-punk version of me. And in both cases, they changed the character to be me. And so if on 90210, that Emily Valentine played guitar and sang and rode a motorcycle, none of which I can do, which is why after the first episode, she doesn't do any of those things ever again because I couldn't do any of them. I lied and said I could, but I couldn't.
What was it like for you being around that crew at that time?
Intimidating, really. I mean, they were a phenomenon at the time. They were like on the cover of Rolling Stone and stuff. They were like a legit phenomenon. And they were sort of around my age, you know. The only other show I'd ever done with people my age was Head of the Class. Those people, actually, it was weird. It was the opposite of that show that it was on 90210. The girls on Head of the Class were sweet. The boys were really mean. And it sort of flipped on 90210 where the boys were really nice and the girls were sort of mean. Actually, I have that, my calling them mean is sort of evolved. It wasn't that they were mean, it was that they weren't warm and fuzzy, which is that why should they be? You get an acting job and you don't do it to make best, to go home with a bunch of new best friends. You go to do a job, and you know, you rarely keep a person from a job. You work and you go home and you never talk to them again until you work with them again. So it wasn't like I went there going, oh, I hope they'll all love me and we can all have a barbecue. But the girls were completely indifferent to me, which when you're insecure and intimidated, people being indifferent feels like hostility, you know, because the world revolves around me. And if they're not paying attention to me, it must mean they hate me, which isn't the case. But yeah, so Jason and I ended up becoming a couple, and I lived with Jason for 5 years. So and they're still family to me to this day. He and his wife and kids are family to me, and so yeah, it was intimidating at first, but it got to be not.
So had you reached the point now that you actually wanted to be an actress or an actor?
Yeah, once I decided to pursue it, and that was that. It was super focused, and then I got on sets and I saw what directors do, and I was intimidated by that. Being an actor is the easiest job on set. It's everything else is done. They found the location, they wrote the words for you to say. Someone does your hair, someone bought you the clothes. You know, they feed you. All you got to do is say some words. It's nice work if you can get it.
Did you know after that season ended that your role was over, or did you think that it was going to be a recurring role?
When I did the first episode, they said it's 1, and if it goes well, it could be as many as 10. Same thing happened on ER. They said, we'll give you 1, and if it goes well, there could be more. So in both cases, they apparently went well because I kept going. I thought when the character, actually, here's what happened on 90210. The character arc ended, and I'd never had a guest star spot go on beyond what the original deal was. So I had no expectation that this would be different. But I complained to somebody at some point and said, oh, I know. I didn't like what in the drug episode, the Euphoria episode where I give Brandon drugs. I didn't like a lot of what they were having my character do. And Jason tricked me into calling Aaron Spelling. Jason had like the only cell phone in America and said, here, I'll call Aaron for you. Here, tell Aaron you don't like it. And he hands me the phone. And I'm like, hi, is Aaron Spelling there? Who's calling? I say, Aaron takes the call, which is unbelievably generous of him. He's like, yeah, what's going on, honey? I'm like, Emily's character, she's going crazy. I don't like it. And she's doing Euphoria, and they want me to sing the words Euphoria to the tune of Gloria. I don't know which Gloria, because there's many Glorias. But all of this is so dumb. I can't handle it. He's like, don't worry, sweetie. We're gonna redeem her. She'll, you know, it'll be okay. I'm like, yeah, but he's like, don't worry. We're gonna give you a spinoff. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, have I ever lied to you? I'm like, well, you've never spoken to me, so you never had a chance to lie to me before, but okay, bye. And they did. They gave me, the spinoff was Melrose Place. I was the spinoff character for Melrose Place. And I had meetings about the whole thing, and they described what my character would be up to and what it would be Emily Valentine on Melrose Place. And it was very, very, like, there's only 3 more episodes that we're going to shoot before the end of that season. And I thought I had a particularly strong negotiating position because there was nobody else to spin off. And I was afraid of doing the show because I was pretty sure I wouldn't like the show. But I was also afraid, everyone thought I got 90210 because of Jason, but that's not, I met Jason on the show. I got the job. I knew that if I did Melrose Place, that everybody would forever think I've only ever worked because of my connection to Jason, which is a bummer because it's not true. It wasn't true then. And I'm like, I envision like every Emmy's like, here's Jason Priestley from 90210 and Christine Elise from Melrose Place. You know, that sounded gross to me too. So I asked for a lot of money, and they were like, yeah, no. Okay, bye. Bye, bitch. And they just wrote a new character in, and they wrote the character of Jake, who Grant Show ended up playing, and they spun him off. Which is great. I wasn't something I regretted. I didn't, as I thought. I didn't. I was never a Melrose Place fan. So it wasn't like I was watching that show going, "Damn." It wasn't like I was watching Friends and I passed on it, you know. So yeah, that.
Wow. Another really interesting thing that happened in your career was Child's Play too. I mean, you're still kind of involved with the whole Chucky thing. How did that all come together? Because that's pretty different than what you were doing.
In what way?
Well, maybe not as the role, but it was a different kind of film. It was not as happy, I'd say. It was more of a thriller. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I hadn't done a whole lot of work up until then, and China Beach was already under my belt, and China Beach is dark as fuck. So yeah, I'm a drama actress, not a comedic actress. I've done mostly drama stuff. I feel most comfortable doing drama. So I did, and as the same character I always play, which is that misunderstood, offbeat, tough chick with a heart of gold. That's been my stock and trade for a long time, or was then, so it's very much the same.
I was
So
thinking more in the horror
yeah,
genre.
but that's not what you're thinking about when you're on a set and you're working. You're not thinking about an audience watching it or what. You're just playing a character who's in a real moment, and the moment's there where a doll was trying to kill me. But it's no more fake than doing a love scene with someone you don't like. So in fact, it's easier than that. So the hardest thing in the world to do is love scenes at all. Love scene with someone you don't like is even worse. So yeah, no, it's just work. Work is work. And people ask, is it harder to working with a doll than a person? No, it's all so fake. And there's a crew that the audience never sees. There's 75 people that are all standing around watching you do it. And it's also incredibly fake, that it's all the same ultimately when you're doing it. And so I got that job the same way, and others. I auditioned, didn't actually get it the first time, and they decided to see people again that they had seen that had been near misses. And when I went back, I had in between the two auditions, I had gotten an episode of 21 Jump Street and an episode of Baywatch, the old Baywatch pre Pam Anderson. And I was on the set of Baywatch when they called and said, "Do you want to come back in and try again?" And so I did, but I had to be on set in Malibu at like 9:30 in the morning. So they had to come in really early, like at 8:30 in the morning, to have the audition for me. And I was just like, yeah, let's get the show on the road here. I got somewhere to be. And I had so much more confidence the second time because I had a job. I think that the attitude that I had
Mhm.
uh, got me the job.
That's great. I want to go ahead a little bit here because I watched which is actually an award. You won a lot of awards for it. Your short film, Bathing in the Single Girl. I rewatched it again last night because I know I'd be talking to you. It's really good.
Yeah.
But my little prop right here, this
Yeah.
book that came out of that film is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I mean, it's been a few years since I read it, but I remember the premise of it. And it was like you didn't hold anything back at all in the book. Um, it's different. I mean, it's the same as the film, but it's way more elaborate. Um, how did that all, when you did the short film, was it because you got good feedback on that you decided to do the book? Or were they?
No, what happened was there was there's a theater here right near my house called the Upright Citizens Brigade, and they were doing a thing there for a long time called Four Stories in a Cover. And it was four people reading like a 2,000 word comedic essay about their life, and then somebody doing a funny cover of a song. So four stories in the cover. And I would go to it all the time. It was fucking great. And so a writer friend of mine, a girl, she said, "Hey, we should both write something and submit and see if we can get involved in this." And so I said, "Okay, I'll do it if you do it." I did it. She didn't do it. They did accept mine. So I got up there and I've read basically with the short film. I just read that, which is why it breaks the fourth wall, and why I address the audience in the short film, is that's what I was doing in real life, reading it in front of an audience. I was addressing them in the telling. So I I did it, and the friends that saw it were like, "That was really funny. You should have recorded it so you could show your agents that you can be funny." I was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So I did it again at another theater called Naked Angels, and recorded it, bullshit, just, recording. And then I posted that on Facebook, and an A-list director of photography guy does like, shampoo ads and stuff, like female beauty is his specialty. He was like, "Oh, that's really funny, but it looks so bad. You should really make a short film out of it. If you let me direct it, I'll shoot it for you." And I was like, "Okay." And like 2 weeks later, we started shooting it in my house. And so it happened so fast, I didn't change a word of the thing that I had written to be read live, which is why it's sort of done in a cabaret style in the movies, to also explain why that fourth wall is being broken. And we shot like all one thing, like static, beautiful shot in my living room, and we watched it back in 10 minutes of like one shot moving in, it was just too static and too boring. So we did another day of pickup shots in my bedroom and my bathroom, and then needed more breaking up. And so he was like, "I know what we're going to do. We're going to show like your washer and dryer, like sad, lonely girl doing her laundry, like sad, lonely girl with her cat." I'm like, "I don't think you get the tone of this piece. It's not about sad, lonely girl. It's a comedy. It's not like, oh, poor me, I don't have a boyfriend. It's like, fuck guys, is what it is." So he's like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't, you can have the footage. Whatever. I'm out." So I had another friend who could shoot it for me. And so I would watch it all cut together, and then find places where there were lulls, and find a different spot in the house and a different way I could shoot something different to break it up and cut it together so it moves, so it's pacey, and so I did. And then I was programming film festivals at the time. I've been programming for like, I programmed for like 20 years, film festivals. And so I had a lot of connections in that world. So I ended up doing 100 film festivals with it. In 2 years, I did 100 film festivals with it. And the awards that I won were not like fucking Oscar. I won like, best short film at some festival you've never heard of in Idaho, but it won like 20, a lot. It won a bunch of, awards no one's ever heard of, but still it's nice acknowledgement. Right. And it's hard to make something, it's hard. Short films are sort of a really special thing. It's hard to tell a story in under 10 minutes, or especially even if you can do it under 5, you're a lock to get into every festival you submit to, because a really good, very short film is hard to find. So it did well. And then someone at the end of that said, "Hey, I know a book agent who's friends with Jackie Collins," and blah, blah, blah. So I went and met him, and he's like, "This film's really funny. If you can expand upon it, if you can make this into a full-length novel, I can get you a 3-book deal." And I was like, "Well, watch that happen." And I started writing the book that day. And I wrote it in 8 weeks.
Wow.
I wrote it. If you tell me there's a check at the end of a tunnel, watch me get through that fucking tunnel as fast as possible. So I wrote it really fast. That guy and my agent had a falling out. So that guy went away. So that 3-book deal from the Jackie Collins guy never manifested, but the book did. And so what I did was I just Googled the most powerful book agents, literary agents in New York, and submitted it blind to 10 of them. One of them said yes. And so they started submitting it. And then the feedback was, everyone's, "Oh, it's really funny. Oh, it's Chelsea Handler. It's really great and funny, but not for us, not for us, not for us." And the general feedback was that the premise that I started the book initially was, some girl realizes she does that stupid deal with her male friend that if we're not married by a certain point in time, we'll marry each other.
Yeah.
Is dumb, but I just needed a launching point to get the book written, and I didn't want to sit there. I didn't write an outline. I wrote a totally stream of consciousness. I just wrote 2,000 words a day, 7 days a week for 8 weeks, and I got the book done. So people were saying, "Oh, the problem is it's got this really romantic comedy setup, but then it gets really dark as you go into it." So people who want a romantic comedy are not going to like what they get once they start reading, and people who are going to like where the book goes aren't going to get there because they're not going to like how it starts. So you need to fix that. You need to either go mainstream or go dark. And so I went dark, and I rewrote about 50% of it. That took another 8 weeks, and I still couldn't sell it. I still got, it's really smart and funny, not for us. So the thing with comedy is similar to the thing with cooking. Everyone's like, "Why don't you write a cookbook? Write a cookbook." Well, there's a couple of reasons why I don't write a cookbook. One, cookbooks have to have color pictures. Cookbooks are incredibly expensive to produce. And I self-published my book, and that cost me like $5,000 everything to have done. And I haven't made that money back, by the way. a cookbook would cost 40 grand, it's just impossible. And there are much more, you have to write. People don't realize cookbooks have a lot of text in them that you never read, but it's all there. They all have a ton of shit in the beginning. Who was I going with that? So that's why I don't write a cookbook, but I lost my train of thought on that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The book was really good. It's called Bathing in the Single Girl. If anyone's out there listening and watching, you could probably still find it out there, or you
You
can
can find
order it.
it on Amazon. It's on Amazon, and it forever will be because I handle it. So I think it's in such a state that even if I die, which eventually I will, I think it'll still be there because it's print on demand. So that's the charm of a self-published book, is they didn't print 40,000 of them sitting in a warehouse somewhere. They're printed when you order them, so that file just sits there on Amazon forever. Doesn't cost me anything. Doesn't cost them anything. You order a book, they print it, and they send it to you.
About the book for a second, some of the stories and the characters and the how do I ask this question? Is a lot of this book a personal book, or is it fiction?
Hold on, I'm refreshing my coffee. Both.
Because I know you probably had to change the names of the
It's
the men in your life.
Oh yeah, any of the men that inspired any of those stories, I changed everything around their physicalities, what they do for work, their names, everything in it, because it's incredibly unflattering portrayal of almost everybody male. And I don't hate men; I love men. It's funnier to be mean than to be nice. And so, yeah, I don't want any of the guys that I don't want anyone in it to recognize themselves. I want them all to have plausible deniability and go, well, that sounds. I did say that sentence, but that the rest of it's not me. That's not me. So this stuff's stolen. I'll tell you, it's like I, the stuff that's true is probably the stuff you think isn't true, and vice versa. It's really weird. It's like see people and they're like, "Oh my God, are you Christine Elise?" I'm like, "Yeah." No, you're not. No, you're not. Okay, no, I'm not. Yeah, you are. Yeah, people, they want to believe what they want to believe, and I wrote it in the first person on purpose. I knew people would think it was me. It's not me. I knew everyone would think it was me though, which made it a little bit braver because that the character everyone thinks is me is kind of an asshole, and a lot of really humiliating things happened to her. So to
Yeah.
only have people think that that's my story is it was I'll take credit for being brave for that.
So no one ever figured out that they were in the book and came and asked you if that was them that you were talking about. Wow, that's good.
The other charm is most people don't read, so
Well, I read every single line in the book and I loved it. So I might have to go back and read it again because it was a few years ago that I read the book, but I had it and I wanted to bring it up. So
I want to interject. It's the thing I'm proudest of in my entire life. It's incredible. It's entirely a one person job. I did this. If you hate the book, I get all the blame. If you love it, I get all the credit. It's a book. It was written in 2010, 2011, and language has evolved a long way, even just in those years. I feel like there's a lot of moments in that book that might get me canceled because not everything ages well. My mother warned me about a bunch of stuff that I put in there in the moment and said, you might not want to use this particular phrase. You might want to use these words. And I was like, thank you for the advice, but people talk like that. People are imperfect and talk in imperfect ways, and they say shitty shit all the time. I'm not writing a book about perfect people. I'm writing a book about assholes. And so both male and female, everyone's a dick in this book. So my defense, if you read something you're offended by, it's fiction, and a book about people that never misspeak or never misbehave would not be a fun book.
True, very true. Two of the things that you did in your past 90210 and Chucky have kind of have been born again. Can you talk about that and what happened, and if you expected either one of those things to happen, and where you see them going, if anywhere now? I know Chucky is a TV show now, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard you asked Jamie and Chris in your interview with SSD interview, if they ever foresaw that 40 years later people would still give a shit. And the answer is always no. There's no possible way you could ever know 40 years ago or 30 years ago what would come back around. In the case of Child's Play, I wasn't in Child's Play 3, so I had no expectation of ever being involved in the franchise again, and I wasn't for 30 years. So you don't expect it. And 90210, when the reboot came in 2019, I couldn't have seen that coming down the pike, in 1995. I'm incredibly grateful they both did, though, and in the case of 90210, it's especially flattering because there were 10 years of that show with a fucking fuck ton of guest stars, many of whom and regulars whose names that show went on forever with a huge cast. So there's so many people they could have chosen from to bring back outside of the 7 surviving regulars to have been the one, and that pissed off a huge chunk of the 90210 universe. Like, why her? She sucks. She only did like 13 episodes, and I fucking hate her. And why her? But she did. I did 13 episodes ultimately over 3 years, and the character is significant because here's the legacy of that character and why I think she was chosen is that there was nobody in 1991 on that show that stood for anybody that felt other than, whether that was they're punk rock or they're gay or they're Jewish in an Irish neighborhood or they're poor in a rich neighborhood or all the ways you can feel other than. There was nobody on that show that stood in that place, really. And so when Emily Valentine showed up, everybody that felt disenfranchised in any way, that's the character that's me. That's the character that's me. And for little girls who are not the pretty little girls in school, not the Kelly and Brendas of school, saw the offbeat girl get the hot guy, which was a huge win for all the misfit toys in the world. To have Emily get Brandon was a big score and really validating thing, I think, for a lot of people. So when the people approach me about that show, it's always somebody who was punk rock or gay or whatever, which I was punk rock in school too. I was the outsider in school too, which I think that brought authenticity to that character that people feel. You can always tell when they dress up somebody who's not punk rock and make them be the punk rock character. I don't think anyone ever doubted that I was the punk rock character in anything I ever did, So, because I was wearing my own clothes and stuff. I wasn't wearing they went to Target and bought something that looks punky. I was wearing my own stuff, that black leather hat that I wore in Child's Play and I wore in 90210. I owned that hat before I even became an actor. It was really, truly my hat. I still have it. So the legacy of that character is that people that I include myself among felt spoken for on that show by her. So that's an incredibly awesome legacy. I think and that's why I think she was the one that came back. I mean, there's an infinity of beautiful girls and boys that were on that show that didn't make a mark, So that was super flattering. With Chucky, it's not as surprising that I would come back because Child's Play 2, if you took a poll about everyone's rate the 7 Child's Play movies from favorite to least favorite, Child's Play 2 would win the contest significantly more than Child's Play 1, which is in second place. It's most people's favorite, and so and my character, so significant, just went by the wayside for so long. It was just inevitable that she had to come back and be explained, So in 2019, they invite me to 90210 to come back and play with these actors I've known for 30 years, some of whom I consider family. It was unbelievably awesome. They gave me the best. I had the best character on the reboot of 90210. They gave me the greatest shit to do. I was so fucking happy there. They were going to make me a regular because everyone was all happy, joy, and then fans gave the show the finger. Fans hated it. And that was 2019. In 2021, to be invited to another show project that I'd done 30 years ago to play the same character 30 years later, to have that happen twice in 2 years.
Yeah.
Winning the lottery twice in 2 years. It's incredible. It's an impossibility that would happen. And it did. And Don Mancini and Jennifer Tilly and Alex Vincent, I've known them all since 1989. I knew Jennifer before either one of us had been involved in the Chucky universe. So, and I got to do that sort of secret cameo thing at the end, after the credits and Cult of Chucky. So I was teed up for what came next, and I knew that was coming. At the conclusion of season 1 of Chucky, Don Mancini, who's the godfather of all things Chucky, asked me, what was the best part of coming back. And I said, I got to play a 50-something-year-old woman who's a fucking badass. And I got to do that on the 90210 reboot too. It's really, women my age don't get to come. You don't get to play sexy things. Jennifer's playing sexy. Jennifer Tilly, she's, a little bit older than I am. And she's playing fucking bodacious, vampy, gorgeous woman. I'm playing a fucking badass assassin. Women our age don't get cast like that. And so it's incredibly gratifying. And Dawn said, what's the thing you have in common with 90210 and with this? What do these two projects have in common for you? Gay men are the showrunners. Gay men aren't afraid of women. Gay men give women awesome shit to do.
Wow. Is there something that you want to do that you haven't done yet, that you're thinking about doing, or that's in the works for the future?
I'd like to lose 25 pounds. That's been in the works for a while. It's going nowhere, but I'm trying. I'm thinking about it at least. I bought a Peloton. It's sitting up there. Now what I want to do is make a living. Really, it's practical for me. It's always been practical. Because that's what I do to make a living. So, people, why did you take, people, a big misconception people have of actors is that their resume reflects their taste in things. Your resume only reflects your taste in projects if you're Jennifer Lawrence or, Ryan Gosling. Then you can pick and choose what you're doing. And back in the day when I was doing well and was young and still I could have ended up with a body of work that would be important. You weren't allowed to do TV and movies. You had to kind of pick. You weren't, like, if you were a TV actor, you weren't allowed to sort of even really read for anything important. So I turned a lot of TV down, Aaron Spelling offered me pilots and things. And I'd be like, no, I'm trying to get into movies, which is the one regret I have, because I never got into movies really, despite the fact that everyone goes, you're so edgy, you're too edgy for TV, you'll be a movie star, or you'll not TV. And that's not what happened. So I regret saying no to some TV. But the opportunity for me to end up with a body of work like Jack Nicholson or something, that ship has sailed. I'm never gonna I'll be 59 in 2 months. I'm never gonna develop a body of work that I'm proud of, which is a sad thing to say, but it's the truth. I'm not gonna end up with 6-7 movies that are classic films. It's not gonna happen. And so really it's just practical. I would like to just keep working and not ever have to get a job at 7-Eleven.
Are you going to stay in California for
Of course.
Yeah, I wish
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, no, Boston and I don't get along. I'm really, really glad I'm from Boston. I think Boston's character building in every way. I always say, people, if you watch movies or depictions of the stereotypical New Yorker, rude and brash and pissed off, that's not a New Yorker. New Yorkers are fucking great. That's the Bostonian that you're seeing there. Bostonians are the cranky ones. But that served me so well. I would not trade being where I'm from for anything. And I would also not move back there for anything. I don't recognize it, which is a big turnoff, it's hard. It's a hard town for me. I don't miss it. I miss the people in it. I don't miss the city.
You can always visit.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it.
Not at all.
Good luck to you.
All right, you too. Thanks. I hope I wasn't too negative.
No, you're great. Thank you.
All right, cool.